The Great Lakes region functions as an economic megaregion with a diversity of people, industry, and land uses. It contains large cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland, as well as substantial portions of the Corn Belt, one of the most productive and intensively agricultural regions in the world. Great Lakes water bodies contain 1/5 of the world's surface fresh water and are a cornerstone of the region's economy. With about 40% of land allocated to crops, the management decisions of the Great Lakes farmers are inseparable from an analysis of the future economic and environmental health of the Great Lakes region. For decades, markets have become more and more integrated globally, leading to greater economic interdependence among the U.S. and other nations of the world. This has benefited some U.S. consumers in the form of lower prices and opened up new export markets for U.S. producers, but the benefits and costs of globalization have been unevenly distributed. In response, some have advocated for less global integration, asserting that greater economic independence will improve socioeconomic well-being and reduce vulnerabilities to political and economic volatility abroad. Our project seeks to explore the potential ramifications of deglobalization for the Great Lakes region and for its diverse food, energy, and water systems. We plan to partner with key stakeholders to determine the extent to which these impacts can be predicted. With much of this region's economy tied to global markets, any trade war or other shift in national or international economics is likely to reverberate throughout the Great Lakes economy, affecting both the people and companies who live and do business there, and setting in motion changes that could have pronounced ramifications on how land, water, and energy resources are used and affected for years to come. For example, how might the potential tariff on U.S. agricultural exports that were recently announced by the Chinese Ministry of Commerce affect the Great Lakes region? A lengthy trade war may substantially undercut international demand for crops grown in the Great Lakes region. Farmers producing for global markets could see their revenues decline, potentially quite dramatically, and consumers would suffer too as a result of U.S. tariffs, facing higher prices and a potential reduction of the availability of beef, fruits, and vegetables. In the longer run, less global demand for corn and soybeans and reduced availability of imported fresh fruits and vegetables might prove to be an impetus for Great Lakes farmers to shift from commodity crops and allocate more land to produce different products for regional and U.S. markets. Or a decline in access to global markets could induce farmers to invest in non-food production, for example, in energy crops, or reduce the overall amount of land in agricultural production. In any case, these changes in land use will affect energy and water demands, and in turn, affect air and water quality through changes in greenhouse gas emissions and nutrient runoff into regional rivers and lakes. Our project goal is to develop a modeling framework that will allow us to project potential futures under different hypothetical scenarios, like a trade war or policies to promote greater energy independence, and assess the environmental and economic consequences of these policies. In particular, we are interested in the nexus of food, energy, and water systems in the region. We knew something about how many of these parts affect the system. For example, farmers make decisions about what to grow based on current and future expected prices, as well as other considerations such as access to local and regional markets and the prices of natural resource inputs, including land and energy. Farmers are entrepreneurial, and some farmers are going beyond producing food to producing energy as well. Opportunities for farmers to provide energy resources through bioenergy crops or shale gas extraction, or to generate electricity through wind turbines, are relatively small, but they will increase over time. These changes raise several important questions. How will this increasing competition for land influence food production? What will the effects be on runoff and water quality in the region? How will changing energy markets influence changes in land use? Once we recognize the many ways in which food, energy, and water systems can interact, it becomes harder to predict the effects of any one change on these highly interdependent systems and on the people living in the region. To represent these systems and their interactions, we are developing a dynamic regional modeling framework, which we finally refer to as the DRFEWS model. This is a conceptual figure from our project proposal that captures and describes many of the components of the food, energy, and water systems in our region. While I won't take time now to walk through all the complex linkages and feedbacks that are represented in this figure, it's fair to say that DRFEWS modeling framework is a rigorous accounting of this quote-unquote systems of systems. Our other videos in this series will unpack some of the details of different components of this framework. Our approach is centered on a dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model that accounts for the interrelated effects of changes in markets over time. The model quantifies the effect of future environmental, economic, or policy conditions on the regional production of food and energy services that use land, water, and energy resources, and that depend on farmer, land use, and watershed dynamics. We will use DRFEWS to simulate how different future scenarios might reverberate through the regional economy and affect social, economic, and environmental outcomes. To make this project tractable, we're proposing a series of interconnected steps. First, we will develop a model of the broader regional economy that can capture interactions between different sectors, food, energy, manufacturing, etc. We call this Regional Economic Model DRFEWS 1.0. Second, we will improve the existing watershed model for the Western Lake Erie Basin to improve how it captures farmer land use and field management decisions, and to simulate the environmental outcomes associated with possible changes driven by deglobalization. Next year, we will combine these models to create a new DRFEWS 2.0 that can be applied to the 5-state study region of Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. Along the way, we will develop some baseline and alternative future scenarios that can be assessed using the new model. Our goal is to simulate the effects of several possible future shocks to the system. For example, movement away from global markets through trade war or other policies that could cause key actors to adjust their behaviors and decisions. Next, we will assess a range of outcomes from each scenario and explore what types of policy responses are the most efficient in terms of improving the net economic and environmental benefits, as well as those that are robust to future uncertainties. Finally, throughout the project, we will be engaging in activities designed to increase the impact and benefits of the project to students, stakeholders, and regional decision makers. This includes training programs for high school, undergraduate, and graduate students, and convening a large regional workshop at the end of the project. This video was designed to give a brief overview of the DRFEWS project. The other 5 videos in this series provide more details all about the various components of our overall effort. We encourage you to watch them all. Thank you very much for your attention and interest.